I didn't move to the quiet town for fresh air or a cheaper lease. I moved because Noah and I shattered in ways that made our old streets feel haunted. The cottage I found had a crooked porch and a lemon tree that leaned like it was eavesdropping. On the first night, I unpacked the kettle and the framed photo from last summer, the one where we're laughing, sunburned and sure of ourselves, and set it face down in a drawer. Healing, I told myself, would be small and private, like watering a plant nobody noticed. I learned the corner cafe at dawn smells like butter and old wood. The owner, Lynn, writes names on cups and fountain pen. New? She asked. I nodded. She slid me a free croissant like a peace treaty. The bell kept singing as locals came and went, a teacher with ink on his hands, a girl in track pants, a mechanic with lavender oil on her wrist. It felt safe to be a stranger among their routines. Safe until a familiar voice said my name like it still belonged to me. I turned, and there he was. No. I met Maya on a platform where the sky kept threatening rain, and the announcement board apologized without changing anything. She asked for a charger. I handed her the last battery I owned as if lending out a little bit of my future. By the time the train arrived, we'd traded weather jokes, stray details about work, and a look that felt like stepping through a hidden door. I told myself not to read into it. I did anyway. With Maya, life arranged itself into soft routines, plants curling toward the kitchen window, a shared calendar glowing with color-coded hopes, mirror notes that said, "Breathe your funny oat milk." I learned to cook rice properly because she teased my mush. We fit like good shoes, no blistering spectacle, just relief mile after mile. Still, ordinary has shadows. We both kept small pockets of history. Her ex, Noah, appeared now and then in the way old weather returns, mentioned, shrugged off, not quite gone. My own past I padded with jokes. We promised honesty and mostly kept it, which is not the same as saying everything. When I moved into her narrow terrace with an off-key neighbor, we stood among boxes and promised to start clean. For weeks the key turned easily and the house answered. Then, on a Tuesday that smelled like basil and rain, her phone lit up face down on the counter. A name heavy enough to tilt the room, Noah. A preview line. "Are you okay?" I heard. Heard what? My stomach closed around an invisible stone. I didn't open it. I stirred sauce and practiced casual. She came back from the shower in a halo of steam and kissed my neck. "Smells amazing," she said. I asked if everything was okay. She glanced, shoulders altering by a centimeter only love can measure. "Yeah," she said. "Just noise." The pasta hissed. The neighbor laughed. The night pretended to be simple. Trust, I told myself, is a choice you make before you need it. I made it for one more night. But the words I heard trailed me into sleep like a draft under a closed door, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. Morning arrived with the clink of spoons and the whir of the old kettle. I told myself to stop circling that message and start the day we had planned: groceries, a walk by the river, maybe a movie if the rain kept up. Maya slipped into her denim jacket, and the world steadied. On the way out she locked the door and asked if I had the list. I did, and also a knot I didn't know where to place. At the market, she picked plums the way she makes decisions, patiently, palms weighing, eyes sure once they were ready. We left with basil, pasta, too many peaches. Back home the afternoon slid into the kind of easy silence couples earn. I fixed the crooked cabinet door, she replanted a suffering fern. When I reached for the drill the phone buzzed again. The same name. I didn't read the words, only the shape of them on her face. A wince, quick and practiced. "I'll handle it," she said when she caught me noticing. "It's nothing." Nothing has a weight, though. She typed quickly, then turned the phone over as if putting a lid on a simmer. I tested the cabinet, and it stayed. We tried a movie, then turned it off because the love on screen felt like our understudy. "I'm here," she said, and I believed her, but belief and peace are cousins who don't always visit together. That night my mind rehearsed versions of a talk. Me asking directly, her answering cleanly. Relief pouring through the room like fresh air. But when the lights were real and the room was morning again, I made us coffee and asked which mug she wanted. Sometimes the smaller courage is to wait until your question will be heard, not just answered. I thought I was choosing that courage. I didn't know time was choosing for me, too. When I reached for the sugar, I saw a piece of mail addressed to her in Noah's last name, forwarding notice. Old, maybe? The postmark, recent enough. I set it on the counter, and the space between us shifted by an inch I couldn't cross. We should talk tonight, I said finally. She nodded without looking up. The kettle clicked off like a period none of us had written. We talked that night with the window open, traffic moving like a tide below us. I put the forwarding notice on the table between our bowls of soup. I thought you changed everything to your name, I said carefully. She watched steam lift, then nodded. Mostly, she said. Something slipped? I asked about the messages. She pressed her lips together, then let them go. Noah's mom has been sick, she said. He reached out. I didn't want to drag you into their hospital updates. And I heard? I asked. About the storm last week near his place, she said. Power outages. He worries like it's a hobby. She smiled, but it didn't travel far. I should have told you sooner. I nodded. I understood complicated kindnesses. I had stayed friends with a woman I once dated long after either of us needed to, out of habit as much as care. But the room carried a faint tilt, and I couldn't tell whose it was. Set a boundary, I said, gentle. Not because I'm jealous. Because you look tired. Maya held my hand across the table. I will, she said. Thank you for not making this ugly. For a week, the phone stayed quiet. We went to a birthday and left early to read. I fixed the squeak in our bedroom door. When my mother called to ask if we were coming for Sunday, Maya mouthed yes and squeezed my arm. On the drive she made a playlist of songs from years we hadn't known each other yet, and we sang like people who trusted the road. My mother liked her, which felt like a green light I didn't know I'd been waiting at. After dinner Maya helped dry dishes while Dad quizzed me about work. When we got home she curled into me and exhaled a breath that seemed to last days. Maybe we're fine, she said into my shirt. Maybe we just got spooked. I wanted to agree. I almost did. Then the next morning, early, the doorbell rang. I opened it in pajamas and found Noah on our step, holding a paper bag and a look that asked for something too large for the hallway. I'm sorry, he said. I need 5 minutes. Behind me Maya froze, and in that pause I felt the hinge of our story shift. Noah stepped inside like someone entering a chapel he didn't believe in but needed anyway. He set blueberry scones on the shoe rack and kept his hands visible. Her mom called me, he said. I know I shouldn't be here. But I didn't know how else to make sure you both knew. He looked at Maya. Your uncle took a turn last night. Maya's family lives 3 hours away. She grabbed a coat, then set it down. My phone, she started. Noah nodded. She said she couldn't reach you. Maya's eyes flashed toward the kitchen counter where the charger sat. Heat rose in me, a flare either of them deserved. We'll go now, I said. Thank you for telling us. Noah stepped back to the doorway. I can drive if you need, he offered, knowing it was a bad idea. I just wanted to show up correctly. For a moment I saw not an ex but a person trying to carry news without dropping it. I nodded. We've got it. On the drive Maya held my knee and stared at the road. She called her mother, then her sister. The calls were the same shape, worry made practical. When she hung up she leaned on the window. I hate that he came, she said. I hate that I'm glad he did. We handle what's in front of us, I said. She nodded, wiped under her eyes, and asked if I could stop for coffee. In the lot she pulled me close. I choose you, she said into my shoulder. The knot I'd been carrying loosened enough for breath. At the hospital we became relatives. I fetched water, translated doctor speak into simpler words families deserve, and gave up my seat to her aunt. Maya moved between rooms with efficient tenderness. Her uncle stabilized. The crisis thinned into monitoring. Late that night we drove home past dark fields. She rested her hand on my arm and whispered thanks. In our kitchen the scones waited cold and patient. I made tea and we ate them at the counter. "We'll set boundaries," she said, looking at her phone. "No more doorsteps." I agreed. We rinsed the mugs and promised a simpler week. I slept quickly, heavy as a stone. Before morning the past knocked again, louder. Morning delivered proof that promises are lighter than gravity. While I packed leftovers for lunch, Maya stood at the sink scrolling with that fixed stillness that means bracing. "He texted again," she said, not looking up. "To apologize for showing up." I said. "Accept or ignore?" She sighed. "I don't want to be cruel." I nodded, choosing the harder generosity. "Then accept and draw the line," I said. "Be explicit." She typed, paused, typed again, deleted, retyped. When she read it aloud it was clear and kind. "Thanks for the update. Please don't come by again. Use my mom or sister for news." She hit send and leaned on the counter, spent. For a moment we were just two people doing dishes. Work felt like operating machinery in fog. I wrote emails twice and deleted them twice. I watched the cursor blink for me. At lunch I texted Maya a photo of the crooked cabinet now behaving. She sent back a picture of the ferns standing taller, followed by a heart that looked like a bandage. I told myself love travels distance in small proofs. When I got home she was sitting on the floor with a shoebox of letters open. My stomach dropped before I could pretend it didn't. "I was going to throw these out," she said quickly, as if speeding past an accusation. "I kept them because they once mattered. I don't want them to matter now." The letters were from Noah. Some edges were soft from being read. She handed me one. I didn't open it. I put the lid back on the box and asked, "Do you want company?" She nodded. We carried it to the building's recycling and watched the bin swallow a version of our past I'd never lived. Back upstairs we ate leftovers and said little. After dishes we lay on the rug, legs tangled, the TV lights sliding over the ceiling. She touched my face. "Thank you for not making me feel like a defendant," she said. "I just want to be done with all of it." I told her I did too. We turned off the lamp and let the dark be kind. Just before sleep, her phone vibrated once on the dresser, a thin sound that made the dark hold its breath. I woke to light on the wall and a phone that refused to explain itself. Maya slept draped over me, warm as a promise. I reached for water, told myself not to look, then looked anyway. One message from an unsaved number, arriving at 1:13 a.m. Only a fragment on the lock screen. "You should know." I didn't open it. I wouldn't cross the line I'd drawn a dozen times. Instead I nudged Maya awake and handed her the phone. She read, then sat up fast enough to jolt the mattress. "It's his sister," she said, voice low. "She says Noah's telling people we might get back together." The words arranged in my chest like furniture blocking a door. "Might?" I asked before I could cage it. Maya shook her head hard. "No. Not might. Not at all." She typed back, firm and clear, turned the phone over. We made a plan like weekday breakfast, efficient, a little grim. She would call Noah, not to negotiate, but to end the rumor. I would be there but not speak. It felt oddly professional, like setting a meeting room. When the call connected, his voice arrived tired. He tried small talk. Maya didn't allow it. "We are not getting back together," she said. "Please stop suggesting it. Tell anyone who asks I said that." Silence on his end. Then a drawer-like sigh. "Okay," he said. "I'm sorry. I thought..." He didn't finish the thought because there wasn't a version that didn't sting. "I want you to be happy," he added, which is truth that often arrives too late. When she hung up, she kept the phone in her hand like a hot stone until it cooled. Afterward, we walked by the river because movement helps. Leaves drifted in light. Maya threaded her fingers through mine. "Thank you for standing with me," she said. I nodded. "Thank you for standing with us." I wanted to trust the quiet that followed. I almost did. That evening, A complication. My friend Lena messaged that she'd be in town and asked if we could catch up. Maya knows about Lena. History, timing, one kiss that knew it was a detour. Invite her to dinner, Maya said. Let's keep rooms open but doors defined. I believed her. I also knew rooms and doors can be confused when the night gets long. Lena arrived with city weather still clinging to her coat, and the same lopsided grin that once got me into trouble and out of it. I told Maya everything about that history, the almost, the no, the friend we kept anyway. Maya opened wine. I chopped garlic. Lena set the table and teased me for finally owning matching plates. For a while the evening was easy, stories about work, a dog on the tram, a neighbor who sings arias at noon. I watched Maya relax into Lena's wit and felt grateful for grown-up cooperation, the way a complicated past can settle into a chair and behave. Halfway through dinner, Lena asked gently, "How are you two really?" Not the social version, she meant the life version. Maya glanced at me and I nodded. We said it together in uneven pieces: family scare, X at the door, boundaries like traffic cones that keep being nudged by wind. Lena listened without interrupting, which is her best trick. "Drama's only a plot device when we don't learn from it," she said. "Otherwise it's just weather. You dress for it." I saw Maya pocket the line for later. After dessert, Maya offered to walk Lena to the corner. They took the long way back. I put on music and cleaned up, feeling adult and domestic and almost smug about this proof of trust. When the door clicked, I looked up expecting two silhouettes. It was only Maya. She kicked off her shoes, crossed the room, and kissed me like she was taking attendance. "She's good," Maya said. "And she's definitely your friend." I laughed. "Definitely." Later, in bed, she asked if I'd ever wished I'd chosen Lena. I told the truth. Sometimes, in those vague ways people imagine parallel lives at red lights. "But those shadows aren't rooms," I said. "They're postcards. I live here." She lay quiet for a long beat, then turned to face me. "Me too," she said. "Even when it's messy." A car passed, painting the ceiling with light that looked like water. I wanted that to be the end of the chapter. But books have margins, and the next morning, a new note waited there. The new note arrived in the shape of a photo, my arm around Lena at the curb, both of us laughing, a frame caught by someone whose talent is timing. It appeared on a mutual friend's story with a harmless caption: "Reunions." Ordinarily it would mean nothing. But the angle, the closeness, the algorithm's choice to show it to exactly the wrong person first, Noah, turned it into Tinder. Within an hour, Maya got a text from her cousin. "Everything okay? Heard you guys were seeing other people." Rumor travels like a spilled drink, fast, sticky, inaccurate. Maya showed me the screen. I felt heat rise from my collarbones to somewhere patient and unhelpful behind my ears. "I'll fix it," I said, though I didn't yet know how. We called the friend. She apologized and added context to the post, but context rarely outruns a first impression. At lunch I sent messages to the handful of people who might amplify the wrong version. "It's nothing. Don't make it something." Most were kind. A few sent winky faces that make my teeth itch. Maya watched me type, not accusing, just taking notes on how quickly a person can become public. "I trust you," she said. "I just hate the circus." That night, the real damage showed. We were brushing our teeth, both of us foamy and unglamorous, when she said, "When I saw that photo, my first thought wasn't how cute. It was, what am I not seeing? I don't want to live there." I spat, rinsed, looked at our faces in the mirror. "Neither do I said. "Maybe we need new rules." We sat on the edge of the tub like teenagers and wrote them without writing them. More check-ins, fewer guessings. When an old flame enters the chat, the other one gets a window seat. Photos that look like stories require captions that are boringly accurate. We sealed it with a kiss that tasted like mint and relief. In the dark, she tucked her feet under my calves, the way she does when she wants to anchor both of us at once. I slept, but shallowly, the way you nap on a plane, moving, but aware of the seatbelt light. We tried a quiet week and almost succeeded. Work steadied. The cabinet didn't squeak. Maya's uncle sent a selfie from his garden holding a tomato like a trophy, and the hospital smell finally left our clothes. We cooked soup that tasted like competence, and made a list for a small weekend trip. The ocean, a motel with a neon sign that hums, a morning spent doing nothing on purpose. Then Thursday happened. My manager called late. A client wanted a quick turnaround that would eat the weekend. The kind of urgent that is mostly money wearing an alarm clock. I apologized to Maya, my apology already exhausted. She nodded, practical. "We'll move the ocean," she said, trying to turn the knife into a spoon. I promised to make it up to her in ways I actually could. Around 10, while I wrangled slides that pretended to be ideas, Maya grabbed her jacket. "Groceries," she said. "And air." She kissed my head and left. An hour later she returned with paper bags and a new quiet. I asked if she was okay. "Fine," she said. It was not fine. I asked if anything happened. She set a bag down too carefully. "Noah was at the store," she said. "He asked if we were happy." I closed my laptop and found her hands. "What did you say?" "I told him happiness isn't the point," she said. "I told him we're building something steadier than that." I wanted to cheer for the sentence. But then she added, eyes flinching. "He said he misses this version of me, the one who fights for things." The knife somehow turned back to a knife. We washed lettuce like it had done something wrong. We ate quietly, then less quietly. "Does he always get to do that?" I asked, more brittle than I meant to be. "Walk in and give you lines to rehearse?" She set down her fork. "Does Lena always get to laugh in photographs that look like almosts?" The air narrowed. We stared past each other at the space where the ocean trip had been. Maya stepped back first. "We're tired," she said. "Let's be less brave tonight." We watched an episode of a show where people argue tenderly and always apologize within 28 minutes. It helped in the way aspirin helps a broken bone. When the credits rolled, she threaded her fingers through mine. "One day," she said, "I want a week with no past in it." I squeezed once. "Me too." Outside, a siren passed and kept going, and for once I didn't follow it in my head. The next day, we tried therapy. Not because we were breaking, but because we were tired of patchwork. Our counselor, a woman named Ria with the posture of a dancer and the patience of soil, asked each of us to describe the smallest version of safety. Maya said, "Knowing the thing is the thing. Not wondering what else it might be." I said, "Being allowed to mess up without my whole house turning into a courtroom." Ria nodded like she'd been expecting those answers since we were born. "Okay," she said. "Then let's practice." We took turns telling small truths. I admitted I'd checked the lock screen that morning and hated that I had. Maya admitted she'd pictured me and Lena in a different kitchen and hated that she had. Ria didn't flinch. "You're not bad," she said. "You're scared. Name it sooner and it bites less." Between sessions she gave us homework that sounded like a scavenger hunt. 3 gratitudes before coffee. 1 question after dinner that doesn't have an obvious answer. A photo each day that proves nothing but reminds you you're real. We tried, awkwardly at first. I sent Maya a picture of the cabinet not squeaking. She sent a photo of her shoe next to a puddle that looked like the moon. We laughed in the grocery aisle at a pineapple with a haircut like a senator. Small proofs. Boring proof. The kind you build a life on. That weekend, the client relented. We reclaimed 1 day of ocean. The motel sign hummed exactly as promised. We lay on a blanket and practiced saying nothing without it meaning anything. I watched gulls do the only job they know. Maya collected round stones and pretended each one had a tiny passport. "This one's a diplomat," she said, holding a smooth gray oval to the light. "This one's a poet." I kissed her temple and told the poet stone to write us an easier week. Driving home, my phone lit up with a message I shouldn't read. I didn't. I put it face down in the glove box like a snake we'd both seen and refused to name. "Thank you," Maya said, eyes on the road. The sun did that late afternoon thing where it forgives everything for about 12 minutes. Back in the city, the spell frayed, but we kept a thread of it in our pocket. We didn't know how much we needed. 2 days later, Lena called. I got offered a job here, she said, voice bubbling with news. It means moving back. I wanted you to hear it from me. Joy sprang first, uncomplicated and loud. Then its twin, a quieter feeling that spoke logistics in my bones. That's huge, I said honestly. When? Soon, she said. Housing is chaos, but I'll figure it out. Also, I don't want this to become a script someone else writes. Is Maya okay with us celebrating sometime? I told Maya that evening, aiming for crisp veracity. She listened, lips tucked in thought. It's good, she said. It scares me, and it's good. We called Lena together and made all the practical jokes friends make when money and moving are involved. When we hung up, Maya leaned into me. Promise me we won't pretend this isn't complicated, she said. We'll narrate as we go. I promised. Then I added, and you promise me we won't make it more complicated than it is. She kissed my palm in lieu of a signature. The next week rearranged itself around cardboard and bubble wrap. Lena's new apartment a few blocks beyond reasonable temptation. I helped carry boxes because I'm the friend with intact wrists. Maya came too, because avoidance breeds secrets and she refuses both. We assembled a bed with only 2 wrong steps and laughed like people who might actually manage this. But that night, back home, the unease I'd kept at bay arrived like delayed thunder. While Maya showered, a message slid onto my screen from an unknown number with a familiar rhythm. Congratulations on the new neighbor. Be careful what you build within walking distance. I stared at it, heat blooming in my chest. I deleted it, then undeleted it, then sat there in the blue light, choosing not to answer. When Maya came out wrapped in a towel, I told her. I told her because I had promised. Her eyes hardened at the edges. Him? She asked. I nodded. She exhaled slowly. We're not living like this, she said, and for the first time, I believed that we could wield something heavier than worry. We decided to draw the kind of boundary you put in writing. Maya composed a message to Noah that sounded like a ceasefire drafted by gentle lawyers. It named the harm, named the future, and left no aisles for dramatic exits. She read it aloud to me twice, then sent it. The blue bubble looked ordinary. We stood over it like gardeners waiting to see if a fence keeps the deer out. His reply was immediate and long. Apologies that worked too hard. Nostalgia performing cartwheels. A paragraph about the day they almost adopted a cat. Then, tucked in the middle, a line that mattered. I won't contact you again. Relief is not music, it's a key turning. We didn't cheer. We just sat on the rug and let the quiet reintroduce itself. For a few days the world respected the sign on our door. I worked without turbulence. Maya read in the window and underlined like she was leaving breadcrumbs for future her. We cooked the kind of dinner that borrows hands from both people and feels owned by neither. At night we practiced Ria's questions, not like homework now, but like a game we secretly enjoy. What is something you think but don't say? She asked. That I like when you leave your paint water jars on the desk, I answered. It means you'll come back to finish. She laughed and told me I'm corny. I am. Then Lena's first Friday in town arrived. She invited us to a low-stakes housewarming, takeout on the floor, plants and jam jars, a playlist that refuses to choose a decade. We went, because we are trying to live lives that don't hide. It was good. It was really good. At some point Maya and Lena argued about which movie ruined rom-coms. It was spirited and harmless, the kind of fight that ends with both people winning snacks. I let my shoulders drop. On the walk home, summer finally remembered itself. The air was soft enough to press your thumb into. Maya laced our fingers and said, I don't want to be brave anymore. I want to be boring. I laughed. Let's be boring like it's a sport. We passed a shop window and saw our reflection, 2 people holding groceries and a future. I wished the story would end there, in mid-breath, sweet and unresolved in the way real nights are. But the next bend in the road was already waiting, and it had our names taped to the curb. The bend in the road was a text from my sister. "Heads up, Mom's planning a surprise birthday for Dad. She asked if you and Maya can host, since your place has parking." I told her I'd check. Parking is to my mother what weather is to sailors. Hosting meant relatives, and relatives meant questions, and questions meant tiny microphones put under the skin of every choice we'd made recently. I said yes anyway because love is logistics dressed as affection. We scrubbed baseboards, hid the shoebox clutter that collects when two people are building a life in real time, and borrowed folding chairs from Lena, who arrived the afternoon of the party with 3 plants and a smug smile. "Housewarming by proxy," she said, tucking a pot hose on top of our bookshelves. Maya winked. For an hour I let myself imagine that we had graduated from turbulence. By 6, the apartment turned into a coat rack that happened to have walls. My father grinned at the ambush and pretended to be annoyed. He is a man made of gentle theatrics. My mother asked after work, my aunt asked about vacations, my cousin asked if we were thinking about a dog. We answered in cheerful shapes. When the cake came, people sang in 5 keys at once. I caught Maya's eye across the room and mouthed, "We're okay," and she nodded around candlelight. Then my phone vibrated with a number I didn't recognize and a message that knocked the air sideways. A photo of Maya at a cafe that afternoon, seated across from Noah. Caption: "Thought you should know." The room narrowed. The chorus of relatives went faint. I didn't respond. I put the phone face down and let the cake go around me like whether I wasn't in. When the last guest left, Maya closed the door, leaned against it, and said, "Before you see anything out of context, Noah's sister stopped me on the street this afternoon. She begged me to talk to him once, to make the boundary real because he kept telling himself I didn't mean it." She swallowed. I told her no. Then I thought about his mother, about hospitals, about finishing cleanly. I met him for 15 minutes in a public place. I told him I loved someone else and to delete my number. That's all. I wanted to be the person who believes the first draft of the truth. I almost was. "You could have told me," I said, hearing the thinness in my own voice. "I should have," she said, steady. "I was trying to protect your dad's party from becoming a press conference." We stood breathing the same kitchen air and different versions of afternoon. "Do you believe me?" she asked finally. I looked at the plant Lena had left and thought about Roots choosing a shelf. "Yes," I said. "And I'm angry. Both can live here tonight." She nodded, eyes bright. "Both can live here," she repeated, like a line Rhea would approve of. We went to bed facing the same direction, not touching, not touching, a truce without a parade. Anger is an efficient janitor. It cleans out messes by sweeping everything into one pile. The next morning, the pile was still there. We made coffee with the tenderness people use around sleeping infants. "I'm meeting Rhea at lunch," Maya said. "Individual session. I want better instincts than this." I said I'd book one too. We didn't kiss. We also didn't forget to close the sugar jar. Ordinary mercy felt like a lifeline. Work asked for more than it should, and I said yes out of muscle memory. I typed with the part of my brain that wasn't replaying the cafe photo in 50 angles. At noon, I went outside and walked until the houses gave way to river. I texted Lena, doing that thing where I try to solve feelings with cardio. She replied with a selfie mid-sweat and the caption, "Science supports it." I laughed in spite of myself. Rhea saw me at 3. "I want to believe quickly," I said. "I hate becoming an auditor in my own house." Rhea tilted her head. "Auditors look backward. Partners look forward. What helps you look forward?" I surprised myself. "Tasks," I said. "Not petty rules, actual practices." She nodded. "Then design practices. Not to punish, but to steady. And accept that trust regrows unevenly, like hair after a bad haircut. You'll have weird bangs for a while." When I got home, Maya was already there, eyes puffy in a way that told the truth without performative suffering. She handed me a card with a few sentences on it, agreements we'd draft better later. Tell each other before doing anything that smells like closure with past partners. Assume the other can witness hard things. Refuse anonymous messages. If someone won't sign their name, they don't get space in our kitchen. I added one. When one of us is angry and believing the other, we say both out loud. We did. It helped. Not enough to erase the bruise, but enough to stop pressing on it. That weekend we rebuilt small things. We rehung the crooked print in the hallway. We took the longer route to the farmer's market just to pass the puppy that sleeps in the window of the upholsterer. We cooked from a recipe that pretended to be difficult, and wasn't. At night we read until our arms went numb. On Sunday, my father texted a blurry photo of his birthday cake leftovers with the caption, "Victory tastes like icing," and 3 unnecessary emojis. I sent a row of confetti. For 2 days, the world believed we were ready to be gentle again. On the 3rd day, my job made an announcement that would ask all our plans to move their furniture. The company offered me a promotion with a ribbon attached, a relocation option to Newfield, the quiet coastal city Maya loves to visit and hates to leave. On paper, it was perfect: a raise, a team I respected, an apartment stipend that made city rent look almost kind. In the corners of the paper, trouble doodled. Newfield is also where Noah lives. Geography is not destiny, but it is an accomplice. I told Maya on our walk home, hands inside our jacket pockets like contraband. Her face did 3 expressions at once: joy, fear, math. "Do you want it?" she asked. I wanted the work. I wanted the sea. I wanted a version of our life without anonymous photographers and converging streets. "Yes," I said, and then added the honesty I owed. "And I'm scared of the neighborhood." Maya looked at the sky like it could lend us extra intelligence. "If we move," she said slowly, "we do it on purpose, not as fugitives and not as tourists. We pick our routines before the city picks them for us." We spent a week visiting. We tried Newfield on like a coat in a mirror. We ate at the diner where the eggs arrive as if they were waiting behind the counter for you all morning. We chose a grocery store we could stand. We found a yoga studio Maya liked and a dirty bookshop I did. We also mapped the places that would hurt. The street where she and Noah had named a future they never bought. The bar where half of everyone knows the other half. We practiced walking past without letting the past buy us drinks. On the last day, we toured an apartment with tall windows and a view of a church steeple that looks wiser than it is. The landlord, a woman who collects ceramic birds, said move-ins were flexible. Maya stood in the light and looked like something deciding to grow. "We could do this," she said. I nodded. We could. We didn't sign. We drove home with pockets full of ifs and a folder of paperwork that felt heavier than paper should. That night, Lena came over with takeout and the exact wrong right jokes. "If you move," she said, "I'm crashing your couch every weekend like a sitcom neighbor." Then she softened. "I'll miss you. But I want your peace more than my convenience." Maya clinked chopsticks with her. We toasted to adult friendship, to deliberate choices, to maps that don't boss you around. And still, in bed, sleep arrived late. The question walked the apartment like a cat we hadn't decided to adopt, brushing against our ankles, reminding us it existed. We gave ourselves a deadline: decide in 10 days. During those 10, life did what it does, kept happening, demanding small answers so the large one wouldn't be lonely. On day 2, my mother called to say she'd found my childhood trumpet in the attic, and did I want it nailed or ceremonially burned. On day 3, a pipe in the building hissed a warning and then behaved. On day 4, Ria asked us to imagine our best ordinary Tuesday in each city and choose the one with fewer avoidable bruises. On day 5, the bruise found us anyway. Someone, later we would learn it was a friend of a friend with a talent for stirring, posted an old photo of Maya and Noah at a street festival in Newfield with the caption, "Bring back this couple, town was better then." It was lazy nostalgia and effective provocation. Maya's phone throbbed with people who should have known better. She stared at it, then set it down like you set down a pot that's just starting to boil. "I'm not a mascot," she said quietly. "I don't want to be dragged back into a story because someone liked the soundtrack." We went for a drive without a destination. The city slid by, familiar and undecorated by memory. At a red light, Maya said, "Let's practice our Tuesday." We narrated it as if it were already true: alarms, coffee, work, texts, groceries, the walk, the show we'd half-watched while we folded laundry, the way we'd argue about whether a jacket counts as a shirt. We did it for each city. Newfield had the ocean and the team I wanted. Our city had the community we built from nicknames and borrowed sugar. Both had Lena. Only one had the gravitational pull of a past we just finished closing. On day 9, while chopping peppers, Maya said, "I know what I want. I want to choose us loudly, not to avoid him, but to keep choosing you without that shadow." She exhaled. "I think we should stay." My relief was not fireworks, more like a light finally turned off in a room I didn't need to be in. "I agree," I said, surprising myself with how quickly the agreement arrived. We danced a little, badly, to the kettle's rhythm. Then we emailed the landlord to thank her for her time and declined the apartment with a note about ceramic birds that made her reply with 3 smiley faces. We told my manager together. I accepted the promotion without the move. To my shock, they agreed. "We want the work more than the street address," my VP said, a sentence I copied into my brain's folder for good days. That night, we walked to the river and watched the water go where it always goes. We didn't fix everything. We did decide. Decision isn't a cure, it is a floor. We stepped onto it. Something underneath us held. The floor held until it didn't for a minute, because of course. 2 weeks into our new non-move, a package arrived addressed to Maya with no return label. Inside, the letters we had recycled months ago, rescued by some nimble raccoon of a person who works in our building and believes in cinematic grand gestures more than personal boundaries. On top, a sticky note with no name. "Things worth keeping don't belong in bins." Maya stared at it for so long I started washing my hands without needing to. "Do you want me to handle this?" I asked. She shook her head slowly, as if feeling for a switch in a dark room. Then she gathered the letters, put them back in the box, taped it shut, and wrote across the top in black marker, "Return to sender/forward to past." She carried it down to the lobby, left it neatly by the mailboxes, and slipped our building manager a note asking to check the recycling camera. "This is not about Noah," she said when she came back up. "This is about someone who thinks our life is their afternoon special." We made tea strong enough to stand on. While it steeped, I asked the question I didn't want to. "Do you want to read any of them, before they leave us again?" Maya looked at me like I'd offered her a cigarette after we both quit. "No," she said. "I want to read the grocery list." She grabbed a pen and wrote, "Eggs, lemons, the good yogurt, basil if it looks alive." It felt silly and holy. That weekend we left the city for 24 hours anyway, just enough distance to remind ourselves that maps are not villains. We rented a tiny cabin with a porch that seemed to beg for rain. It obliged. We played cards badly, made omelets that didn't flip, read half chapters aloud. At night the storm talked to the roof. Maya traced words on my forearm, our street name, our own names, the word choose, over and over until the letters crowded. "We are boring," she said into my neck. "I love it." I believed her, which is different from hoping to. When we got back, the package was gone from the lobby. The manager had emailed to say a resident was re-educated about boundaries. We didn't learn who. It didn't matter. What mattered was the fence, and that it was higher. That evening, Lena stopped by with a plant that looked like a hairdo and a bottle of something cheap and celebratory. "To boring," she said, raising a glass. "To boring that took way too much courage." We clinked and sat on the floor because the couch was already full of laundry, and we told stories that weren't about anyone but us. Drama does not vanish when you look away. It simply leaves room for new kinds. My promotion came with a presentation to senior leadership, the kind of room where everyone says they want candor and then grades you on choreography. I rehearsed with Maya, who has a teacher's ear and a director's eye. "Stop apologizing before your slides," she said, tapping the table with a pen. "Say the sentence like you believe the sentence." You've done the work. She drilled me through transitions until the words behaved. The morning of, she tucked a note into my bag. You are not asking permission to be good at this. I read it in the elevator and felt my shoulders drop. The meeting went like competence. Not fireworks, not failure. The VP asked smart questions, I had smart enough answers, and nobody used the word pivot like a shovel. After, I walked out into a bright day that felt earned. On the way home, I stopped by the cafe where Lynn writes names with a fountain pen. She drew a small star next to mine. Haven't seen you two in here together lately, she said, not unkindly. We've been practicing boring, I said. She smiled. Boring is proof of life. I picked up a croissant for Maya and a little tart for Lena because friendship is carbs. At home, I found Maya on the floor with the fern, trimming brown leaves like editing a paragraph. I put the croissant on her shoulder, and she squealed, then laughed, then kissed me with pastry flakes. How'd it go? She asked, and I told her the truth. I didn't try to be smaller than my work. She high-fived me and then, eyes dancing, said, Okay, my turn, confession. My stomach did a polite somersault. Go on. I ran into Noah, she said, and then held up a palm. At the pharmacy. It happened fast. He nodded. I nodded. No words. It felt like waving to a boat from a cliff. She exhaled. I wanted to tell you before the anonymous town crier did. Relief flooded so quickly it made me lightheaded. Thank you, I said. For telling me in the boring way. She grinned. Boring way is the hot new thing. We ate on the floor, legs touching, the room full of daylight and plants, and the sound of other people living their lives on the other side of our walls. The fern looked less tragic. The cabinet didn't squeak. Lena texted a picture of her plant thriving like an overachiever, and we sent back the matching fern with a caption. Learning. When the evening slowed, Maya leaned her head on my shoulder. I think we've moved from incident management to maintenance, she murmured. Maintenance is intimacy, I said. She laughed into my sleeve. Put that on a mug. Outside, a neighbor's radio played something with a steady drumbeat, and for the first time in a long time, it matched the pace of our house. Maintenance, as it turned out, was not glamorous. It was laundry at midnight because we'd forgotten the timer. It was eating toast for dinner on days too long for real recipes. It was apologizing before sleep for words we didn't mean at 5 o'clock. But there was a steadiness underneath, a hum that felt like the fridge motor, always there, unremarkable, keeping everything alive. Maya started painting again. Not grand canvases, just little squares she taped to the wall above her desk. Windows of color she could look through when work emails demanded a tone she didn't have. She showed me one, a block of stormy blue with a sliver of pale green like hope sneaking in. It's us, she said. Not polished, but layered. I kissed the back of her paint-smeared hand and left it there long enough for the smell of turpentine to anchor. I started running again. Nothing competitive, just streets that wound past bakeries and basketball courts, headphones full of songs too earnest to admit. Each mile untangled one knot, and by the time I returned, sweat-soaked and smiling, Maya would hand me water like a ceremony. Sometimes she ran with me. We'd end at the river, watching reflections scatter into ripples, and she'd say, "This is cheaper than therapy." Even though we still went to therapy. One night Lena came by with board games and cheap wine. Halfway through, she looked at us across the scattered dice and said, "Do you realize you two are less tense?" Maya raised an eyebrow. Less Tense is the brand we're trying to launch. We laughed, and the game went on, and for once no shadow from the past slipped under the door. But peace, we knew, doesn't erase history. It simply asked you to carry it differently. One evening while folding laundry, I found an old hoodie of Maya's tucked in the back of the drawer, one she hadn't worn since the earliest months with me. Inside the pocket, folded to near dust, was a photo booth strip, her and Noah, blurred by laughter. I held it without breathing. When she walked in, she froze, then sat on the bed. I didn't know that was still there. She whispered, "Do you want me to throw it out?" I looked at the tiny ghosts of them, laughing at nothing, unaware of any future. No, I said. I want you to decide. She took it gently, studied it for a long moment, then set it in the drawer again, under socks. This is part of me, she said softly. But you're the life I choose. It wasn't a cinematic gesture. It was ordinary, and that's why I believed her. We went to sleep with the hum of the fridge and the steady rhythm of rain against glass. I thought, this is what drama leaves behind if you're lucky, not absence, but a quieter room where you can finally hear yourself breathe. By spring, our life had collected enough routines to feel like furniture. Coffee mugs we both reached for without thinking, playlists that cycled the same 5 songs until they belonged to us, inside jokes so worn they were like stones polished smooth. But new furniture means new dust, and dust has a way of showing up just when you think the room is clean. It started with an invitation, a mutual friend's wedding. Venue, Newfield. I read it twice before showing Maya. She scanned it, her mouth curving in a way that was both yes and no. We can't avoid that city forever, she said finally. But do we want to walk into a room full of people who think they know our story? We debated for days. Ria, when asked, tilted her head and said, avoidance is a kind of relationship too. Do you want to date avoidance? That stung enough to make sense. So we RSVP'd yes. The weekend arrived cloaked in tension disguised as formal wear. Maya wore a dress the color of olive leaves. I wore a tie she'd chosen because it looked like forgiveness. We drove into Newfield with windows cracked, radio low. The streets carried ghosts, but we walked them like people who had chosen each other twice. At the ceremony, laughter and music blurred the edges. When the reception began, we moved carefully among acquaintances who squinted like detectives. Lena, bless her, had come too, and she intercepted half the stares with easy chatter. For a while, it felt survivable. Until I saw Noah across the room. He looked smaller than memory had left him. He saw us, froze, then offered a nod that contained no invitation, only acknowledgement. Maya squeezed my hand, and we kept walking. Later, in the hallway outside the bathrooms, he caught my eye. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said quietly. I'm here because they're my friends too. I nodded, pulse steady but quick. Then let's let them have their night. He smiled sadly. Good luck to you both. Back at the table, Maya asked what he'd said. I told her exactly. She exhaled, shoulders softening. That's the first time he's let go without asking for something back. She touched my knee under the table. Maybe we can, too. We danced clumsily to a slow song neither of us liked, laughing at our own lack of rhythm. And in that crowded room, with ghosts politely seated at the edges, I felt the strangest thing of all, peace, fragile but real, like a glass you learn not to grip too tightly. The morning after the wedding, we walked the Newfield shoreline before driving home, shoes in hand, hems damp with salt. The city looked almost kind in the gentler light, like someone who'd finished telling a loud story and finally settled. Maya skipped a flat stone and watched it leap 5 times. I don't want my history to be a locked room, she said. I want it to be a museum I can leave whenever I want. I nodded. With good signage, I added. She smiled. And no gift shop. On the drive back, we catalogued the small victories. No anonymous texts, no rumor storms, no rehearsed speeches. Just hellos, a nod in a hallway, a dance that didn't turn into theater. It felt like taking a breath we didn't know we'd been holding since winter. We stopped for coffee at a roadside shack where the cups were too thin and the gratitude very thick. The barista drew a heart on Maya's lid. She rolled her eyes and saved it anyway. At home, the fern had thrown a new frond as if timed to our return. We unpacked, laundered, returned the apartment to itself. That night, in bed, Maya whispered, I'm sorry for all the times I asked you to carry my doubts while I held on to their roots. I kissed her shoulder. I'm sorry for the times I measured you against shadows. She interlaced our fingers until our knuckles made a little tent. Forward, she said. Forward, I echoed, not as a promise but as a direction we could choose again tomorrow. Monday arrived with emails and errands and a voicemail from Ria reminding us that maintenance is love's longest chapter. We started a new ritual, the Sunday night forecast. 20 minutes to speak our weather for the week, busy, cranky, tender, easily startled, so the other one could pack the right umbrella. It felt silly the first time. By the third week, it felt like having headlights on a dark road. One evening, Lena joined us on the stoop with 3 popsicles and a story about her neighbor's mysterious piano deliveries. "It's like a musical hydra," she said. We laughed until the streetlights blinked awake. When we went back inside, Maya put her hand on the hallway wall like she always does and said, "I think the house finally knows our names." I touched the wall too, half joking, half prayer. "Then let's keep introducing ourselves until it never forgets." The night held, soft and uneventful, the kind of peace you only notice because you remember its opposite. And still, in that gentleness, a new question began to bloom between us, patient and bright. The question arrived in pieces. First a passing comment from my mother about, "When you two make this official?" Then a child's abandoned bike outside the grocer that Maya wheeled to the rack with unexpected tenderness. Then a late-night conversation with Lena about leases and long arcs. We didn't say the words. We let them hover like steam, warming the room without fogging the windows. One Saturday, rain pinned us indoors and we leaned into it. We made pancakes shaped like continents. We reorganized the bookshelf by color, then by use, and finally by which ones we'd save in a fire. When we reached the bottom shelf, Maya pulled out a slim box I'd never noticed. A ring box sized for a different life, plain and dark. She opened it. Inside were 2 copper bands, handmade and perfect, the kind that look better with dents. "We bought these once," she said. "We never wore them." She held my gaze, not flinching. "I want what they meant, but with you." The room was suddenly wider, as if the windows had unlocked. I didn't speak right away. I traced the seam in the couch, the place where the fabric meets and behaves. "I don't need proof," I said finally. "I want language." She smiled in that slow way that says yes lives here. "Okay," she said. "Let's build the sentence first." We walked to the little jeweler's on Maple, the kind of place that smells like metal and soap, where a patient person solders tiny arguments into agreements. We didn't look at diamonds. We looked at metals that would scar and survive. The jeweler liked that. "Rings that admit to gravity," she said, handing us a tray of hammered bands. We chose 2, not matching, but related, like siblings who borrow sweaters. "No date inside?" she asked. "No," Maya said. "Just our names." The letters were small and honest. On the way home, the sky lifted enough to promise a pale sunset. We carried the little paper bag like it might change its mind. In the kitchen, we set the rings on the table between the basil and the bills, then made pasta with too much garlic, eating standing up because the chairs were full of onion skins and the day's mail. After, we sat on the floor and tried sentences on our tongues. Not vows, those can wait. Just the ordinary syllables we'll say 1,000 times. "I'm with you." "I choose you." "I'm sorry." "I'm late." "I'm here." Each one fit, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones. We went to bed light and certain, the copper glinting on the table like a quiet sunrise we'd get to wake up to together. And yet, certainty has its own weather, and the forecast always leaves room for a stray storm. The stray storm was my father's health scare, sudden and untheatrical, a dizzy spell that turned into tests that turned into a week of waiting rooms with bad art. We shelved ring talk without packing it away. Maya became logistics captain, color-coded notes, medication charts, gentle threats to nurses who forgot to return calls. I became driver, snack courier, translator of medical Latin into words that didn't bruise. My mother, who believes in both prayer and spreadsheets, clung to both with equal fervor. In the cafeteria, over coffee that tasted like an apology, Maya said, "This is the part vows try to predict and never can." She squeezed my knee. "We're practicing anyway." I nodded, grateful for practice more than poetry. At night we crawled into our own bed and lay there like bookends propping up a heavy story. The rings stayed on the table, uncomplicated. It felt right to let them wait. On the third day, Dad's cardiologist delivered the kind of news that doesn't make balloons appear but does return the color to a room. Manageable, meds, walks, less salt, more boring. We nodded like students. My dad cracked a joke about living forever as long as forever isn't past 9 p.m. We laughed, the relief arriving in wavelets instead of a single slap. Driving home, the dusk leaned pink. Maya rested her head on the window and watched the houses go by. "I don't want to chase milestones like they're life preservers," she said. "I want them to be mile markers, proof we're still moving." I reached for her hand without looking. "Then let's put our rings on when we're ready to keep walking, not because we're afraid to stand still." At home, the apartment smelled faintly of soap and the basil that never dies. We put the kettle on. I opened the mail. Maya watered the fern. We made 2 eggs because the world felt like it needed simple protein. The rings waited, patient as ever. We didn't ignore them. We nodded to them, like neighbors you're fond of but not ready to invite in. When we finally slept, it was the kind of sleep that happens to children. Heavy, undeserved, complete. Morning brought ordinary errands and an email from Ria, a reminder to celebrate the boring victories. "Not everything needs to be a ceremony," she wrote. "But you can choose to notice." So we noticed, the cabinet still quiet, the pipe not hissing, the absence of anonymous messages, the way our toothbrushes leaned toward each other in the cup. We noticed, and we kept moving, and the next choice arrived not with trumpets but with a calmness that felt like a full exhale. We put the rings on a Tuesday because the day felt sturdy enough to hold them. No string lights, no speeches, just the kitchen window admitting a square of late sun and the lemon tree nodding like a polite witness. We washed our hands, dried them on the good towel, and stood where the floorboards know our weight. I slid the band onto her finger and said, "I will keep learning you." She slid mine on and answered, "I will keep choosing you." It sounded less like a vow than a habit we'd already begun, something you do the way you check the stove or lock the door, not out of fear, but care. Afterward we ate standing up, toast, pesto, the heel of yesterday's bread, because ceremony makes me hungry and because hunger is honest. We texted Lena a photo of our hands and she replied with 37 exclamation marks and the promise of a lopsided cake. My mother called to say Dad walked 2 blocks without getting winded and then told us a story about buying peaches that tasted like July. We stood in the hall and listened on speaker, both smiling at a future that sounds like ordinary phone calls. That night we did the smallest, bravest thing we know, our Sunday night forecast on a Tuesday. "Busy," I said. "Hopeful," she said. "Easily startled," I added, and she nodded. We wrote it on an index card and taped it inside the cabinet that used to squeak. Our private weather report, our reason to bring umbrellas instead of thunder. Then we went for a walk because the light was too soft to waste. At the river, Maya skipped a stone that leapt 4 times and sank exactly once. "Practice," she said, grinning. "Practice," I echoed, watching the rings catch what was left of the sun. Back home, the house smelled like basil and soap and us. The fern had thrown another frond, the cabinet stayed quiet, the pipe remembered how to behave. We made tea and left the cups by the sink for tomorrow's selves to discover, a small kindness with a handle. In bed I listened, not for the next crisis, not for footsteps from the past, but for the gentle hum of everything we have repaired, the fridge motor, the easy breathe between us, the way silence now feels like a room we chose together. Here is what I know, finally and without performance. Our love is not a courtroom, not a stage, not a locked room. It is a museum with good signage and no gift shop, open during reasonable hours, curated by 2 people who keep learning and choosing, who sweep the floors, who hang new work beside the old without pretending one erases the other. We didn't defeat our history, we organized it. We didn't outrun drama, we outpracticed it. When the light faded, Maya touched my hand in the dark. "Forward?" she asked, like always. "Forward," I said, and felt the floor answer yes.